And good morning, Dr. Sanford, and welcome to all our viewers and listeners to the Sanford and Hall Report, where we don't tell you what to think, we challenge you to think, because a thinking individual is a better individual making better decisions for themselves, their family, and their community.
I'd like to go ahead and start. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm an international TV commentator and a global threats expert. Gary, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'd like to summarize saying I'm Rear Admiral Garry Hall, world famous helicopter pilot, adventurer, sportsman, and world traveler. Adriana, I am perhaps the finest helicopter pilot I know, call sign Viper, and I'll be your commanding officer during your tour here at Top Gun. Wait a minute, this isn't the Top Gun group, but I spent 39 years in the Navy as an aviator, ship's captain, strike group commander, and most recently I worked in the federal government as a special assistant to the president on the National Security Council. And you and I met while I was in that position as we were working together on humanitarian affairs. So, and then you wrangled me into the University of Oklahoma Global Threats Seminar, and so I'm glad to be here with you on the Sanford and Hall Report.
It's great that we are now able to do this together, because I think that right now is a great time.
Oh, absolutely. And I think our kickoff topic, while I am very familiar with, you are an internationally known expert on our topic, and that is on counterfeiting and pirating of products. And I think a lot of people would think, well, what's the big deal? It doesn't affect me. But yes, there isn't one household in the United States of America that isn't affected by counterfeiting and pirating. And I want to read a quote from the Department of Homeland Security. It says, counterfeit and pirated goods pose a serious threat to America's economic vitality, the health and safety of American consumers, and our critical infrastructure and national security. So counterfeiting isn't a victimless crime. It's extremely serious. And like I said, it affects every single consumer, every single household in the United States.
That's right. And especially today, given the pandemic, it's even more important that we pay attention to this, because the range of counterfeit goods and the extent of the damage is heightened because of this pandemic. So it's a good topic for us to start off with.
Yes, and I think to tee it up a little bit, the economic consequences are tremendous. It affects the United States with an impact on our economy by $200 to $500 billion a year. Also, this affects 750,000 jobs that are eliminated because of economic reasons and because of counterfeiting and pirating of products that we use on an everyday basis. So this is a tremendous impact. So it's not victimless. And a lot of people think that pirated or counterfeit is just Louis Vuitton purses, Hermes, scarves, or software.
Right. I think a lot of people assume that this is something that you see on the streets in New York or maybe Los Angeles, and why not pick up a nice purse, or maybe you're visiting in Panama. I mean, you've got all these jeans that are basically counterfeit, and you think, wow, great prices. So it's important, I think, for us to tell or explain exactly the range, the category of counterfeit goods and what we're looking at, because it's not just that. And some of these products can be dangerous. So I think it's probably a good idea to explain the 4 different types of counterfeit goods that we will find.
Why don't you give us a little talk on third shift counterfeit goods?
Sure, glad to do so. I think it's important that the viewer understand that in each one of these categories, some you will be able to identify, some you won't. If we're talking third shift, also known as the ghost shift, you're not going to know. Nobody's going to know, because guess what? It's the exact same product that you're buying in the store. The third shift basically is a shift that happens in a manufacturing plant that you have contracted with. When everybody goes home and everybody's sound asleep, the lights go back on. and manufacturing continues. That's why it's called the third shift or the ghost shift. The problem with this, it's not your product, because actually you won't be able to tell the difference. The problem with this, and this is why it's very important to speak to the company and to the executives and explain the damage, because it's about what is being produced at night. Who's going to be benefiting from that? Where is that money going? Some executives look the other way and say, you know what? They're doing a great job. It doesn't matter if they make more product. Let them get that extra money. That's a big mistake, because we don't know where that money is going, and that's the concern that we have with the third shift. The knockoff, we know what the knockoff looks like. It's not perfect. And this sometimes is difficult to explain because it's not somebody you know. I just mentioned manufacturing for the third shift, the ghost shift. Okay, we know who they are. They're actually the company that's manufacturing for us. The knockoff is a third party. It's not somebody you know. It's not somebody, you have no idea where this is coming from. All you know is this product certainly looks like yours, but it's not exactly like yours. The concern with this is that executives a lot of times say, you know what, we have the market and it doesn't matter. That product is not my product and it doesn't look like my product. So they turn a blind eye because their budget, basically, they're going to use that for something else other than fighting counterfeit. This is where we'd like to explain we don't want to do that, because what happens is that individual, and let me tell you that every product out there, if you've got a good product, you've either had issues with counterfeiting or you're going to have issues with counterfeiting. It's something that affects everyone and it affects the consumer.
And so a point I want to make, your points are excellent. And these knockoffs are very close facsimiles. Normally are in the electronics business, you know, whether it be cell phones or computer pieces or gaming consoles, et cetera. And where do they come from? China. And I think that's, you know, China is the biggest manufacturer of counterfeit goods, everything from electronics to cell phones to golf clubs and sports attire. And I think, you know, that points out what the current administration is doing. And you are an international correspondent, I think mostly in the Spanish-speaking arena, which is in our hemisphere. And so you've been an advocate for combating corruption and things of this nature and security threats. Tell us a little bit about how some of these products come across into our system from our borders or through our borders.
Sure. The issue is, if we're looking at our side of the world, you're going to be looking at the tri-border region. This is the border where we have Paraguay, Argentina, and Brazil. It is a very difficult place to patrol and to work with because technology is scarce. It's very difficult to get trucks in there because it's in the middle of nowhere, and you've got all these beautiful falls and beautiful terrain, but at the same time it's hard. The concern with this is there's a bridge, it's called the Friendship Bridge, and over 30,000 products go back and forth. We're talking not only the Gucci purses and the, you know, the Louis Vuittons, but we're also talking arms. We're talking guns. And that's a concern. Another concern for us is everywhere where we have duty-free trade zones, because the laws there are a little bit more relaxed. There's cash going back and forth. And what we don't really understand is how much of that is actually counterfeit that's coming and going in those gray markets. We see it going through the duty-free trade zones. Sometimes it goes through the Panama Canal, and we end up with these products in the United States where we're going to have a purse party. You know, we hear about these things, and, you know, there is a big concern because you don't know who you're financing.
Right, exactly. And people don't understand that, like I mentioned earlier in our report, that these purses and things like that from the streets of Manhattan go right back to terrorists. Now, you were the lead in an international prevention using Six Sigma lean procedures. Tell us a little bit about that, how you rescued a major corporation from counterfeit goods.
We did. We actually had a Lean Six Sigma project and we conducted a raid. I can't talk very much about it because it was a client. The issue with counterfeit goods and the reason it is so attractive is because there is a markup of these products. It's a 300% markup. And with counterfeit goods, most companies don't want this in the papers because it will make them look bad. So that is an attractive element and why a lot of individuals go towards this for terrorist financing. You're going to get a lot of wrongdoers because they're going to say, we're not going to be in the limelight. This product, 300% markup, and they're going to be using the same channels, the same outlets that they would for drug trafficking, but the chances of getting caught here because the company doesn't want the to be in that limelight and maybe doesn't have the budget, it's actually very attractive for them.
Yes, I think one statistic that is out there is a $1,000 investment in counterfeit goods can bring in a return of $30,000, and that is 20 times more than marketing cocaine or heroin. So why should I go into illegal drugs when I can go into counterfeit products and counterfeit drugs, which we'll talk about, and make a profit like that? So like you say, you can drop and run because your wins are going to be greater than your losses. So in aviation parts, 2%, only 2% of aviation parts are counterfeit, but that equals each year about 520,000, so 500,000 parts are out there that are counterfeit going into our aircraft. Now, I don't think we should panic, but you know, they sneak in and get into military aircraft, into civilian aircraft, and it's a great concern to me and should be to anyone who flies. And like you say, you know, I think of that commercial, you know, you can buy this oil filter now, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. And I think a lot of CEOs are making decisions to pay this later, that they need to spend their money on other things than combating counterfeit products. Is there anything else you wanted to say about bringing it into the country? Because I think we should jump into counterfeit drugs that are legal prescription drugs. What do you think?
I think it's important. Let's touch a little bit on, before we jump into the drugs, let's talk a little bit about those damaged goods, because we talked about the reverse engineered and we talked about the knockoffs. And I think it's important to talk about, well, we talked about the third shifts, the ghost shifts, but those damaged goods, they're actually, you may know the individual that's doing this. He may be an employee, somebody in your company. When you're producing a product, not every product is going to come out perfect. And those are the manufacturing defects that go into the tub that are supposed to be thrown out. And what happens is sometimes you may have an individual within the company, or as you're throwing them out, that grabs those products. And that can be extremely dangerous for some of these, you know, if it's equipment that you're using for mountain climbing, or, you know, there's so many situations where the safety concern is there. And to the extent you're being sold a damaged product, you're not going to figure this out until it's
Too late. Yeah, too late.
so,
Exactly.
so I think that's important to note. The knockoff, you may not know who that person is. With regards to reverse engineering, don't know. The third shift, as well as the secondhand goods or the damaged goods, are individuals that you may actually know.
Right. So I think the call to action there is similar to when we combating terrorism of, say, if you see something, say something. If you see somebody, you know, pocketing damaged goods, you should say something to bring it to the attention to your line supervisor or whatever, because we don't want those damaged goods, imperfect goods getting out to market.
And what's
Again, that causes economic losses to the company as well as threats to physical harm to the consumer.
right, and there the concern is, Gary, don't just terminate that individual, but report them, because what happens, and I've seen this, they jump from one company to another, and so all of a sudden it's no longer switchgear it's some other product in some other company, and that company is going to have to deal with that individual as well. So in order for us to be safe, we need this reporting. We need them to reach out. And we do have an IP czar. We do have an office of the whistleblower. I mean, there are many organizations now available so that you can communicate with the US government and let them know, so that they can actually track these people, figure out where they've been, where the damage has occurred, and figure out how to stop it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Good point.
Now, we're going to talk about another area, which is pharmaceuticals and medications. Those medications that are cheaper when you buy them abroad. A lot of individuals think if we buy from Canada, we're going to get a great product. We're going to get something cheap that we can use. That's true if you live in Buffalo, New York, and you can cross over and you can get your product. Maybe you will be saving some money, but it's not true for the individual that lives in Kansas, the individual that lives in Kentucky. For them, chances are they're going to go onto that internet to purchase that drug, that medication from Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there are 40 online pharmaceuticals companies that are online that are selling counterfeit drugs. Now, and there's a convoluted supply chain that it's hard to follow. And that's why, again, this current administration wants to bring manufacturing of pharmaceuticals back to the United States. I think it's something like 60 or 70% of pharmaceuticals are produced overseas, and it's almost impossible to track them. Now, the number one counterfeit drug in the past has been Viagra, and to know that the counterfeit Viagra tablets contain blue printer ink, rat poison, sawdust. It's amazing what you're ingesting. In fact, I think even the CDC found that other drugs that aren't Viagra contain components of it because they're manufacturing it, and there's no hygiene sanitation process in these plants that are manufacturing drugs. But again, the return on investment is tremendous, and so you can take losses, but the return is unbelievable. The other problem with the counterfeit pharmaceuticals is some of them are getting into legitimate supply chains here in the United States. Then doctors, so you have a surgery and now you're supposed to follow up your surgery with a 10-day protocol of taking a certain drug for your healing process, and it turns out it's counterfeit. You wind up not healing, then there's lawsuits to the doctor, there's economic loss, there's death involved. So yes, I mean, during this pandemic, with money shortage, things of that nature, people are going to try and get the lowest price drugs they can, and they're normally counterfeit.
That's a huge concern, because what people don't understand is counterfeit is not generic. So it's not that you're buying a generic, cheaper product. The counterfeiter's goal is just to be able to get this product to you. It doesn't matter to them whether it works. It doesn't matter whether it kills you. This is what we try to always explain, especially to the youth and to the elderly, because those products that you're buying may contain the medicine that you need, maybe not the right dose, or it may not even be close. It's whatever concoction they have readily available. And when we're talking about anything that we are ingesting, it can be medication, it can be beer, it can be chocolate, it can be eggs. You know, a lot of individuals don't understand that eggs are counterfeited. 1 minute video on Google will show you how to counterfeit an egg and how scary that is, because that causes dementia. Those are chemicals, has nothing to do with the real hen's egg. So this is why we want to explain how dangerous this can be. And if you're going to be going on spring break, you know, you may be listening to this and maybe you had a class. Maybe I was able to teach you about this in class. But guess what? Your friend that's with you has not had this class, has not listened to this lecture, and does not have the knowledge. And now you've decided to go abroad and everybody's a little bit tipsy and they're buying from the beach. And all of a sudden you're given a counterfeit beer. these are some of the concerns that we have. So to the extent you've got students, parents out there, you have to be aware of this. You have to talk to your children about this. And to the extent you've got parents, grandparents, you need to talk to them about buying those medications online. It doesn't matter that it says it's coming from Canada and it has all the bells and whistles and says, certified. I can write anything. I can put anything on that internet. And that's what a lot of our elderly viewers don't understand. What you see on the internet is basically what they want to write, not necessarily what is real.
No, absolutely. All they need to do is make a pill the same shape, the same color, with the same impressions, and they don't care whether they've put dirt, sawdust, rat poison, printer ink in it. And so I think that's why our administration is our current administration is doing a great job in holding China accountable, shutting down, bringing manufacturing back to the United States, and trying to putting into action means to lower drug prices. Because if the prices were more affordable, people wouldn't be resorting to internet suppliers. And again, 40 pharmaceuticals or 40 websites out there are selling counterfeit drugs. It's scary. And now with everything from spring break things that you mentioned, from counterfeit chocolate that might have, again, ingredients in it that are bad for you, harmful, beer that's counterfeit. We're not trying to scare you. We're not fear mongering here. But if you have this awareness, this information, and you think about it, you'll do better in what you purchase, what you consume.
Well, and it's important that you are aware of this regardless if you're going overseas or not, because it actually ends up also in our own drugstores, in our own pharmacies. And this is something that we never thought would happen, but we have had raids in our country regarding this. So little shops sometimes have this, but even our name brand stores, because what happens is it's seeping in now. As I mentioned, counterfeit products, the closer they get to the real product, they can actually dupe, I guess is the right word, the actual company that's trying to give you the right product. We've had this happen with chapstick. We've had this happen with Vicks Vapor Rub, and baby oil that goes on your body, that goes on your baby's body. So we need to pay attention. And if you happen to buy in a legitimate store these products or any product and it seems a little bit off, chances are it might be off. So we are really pretty good here in the United States in catching this, but sometimes it does seep in. So pay attention to what you're buying and what you're giving. Now, you keep mentioning China. So the reason you're mentioning China is because when we look at where the counterfeit goods are coming from, over 80% come from China. And I think that's an important point that you and I know, but maybe the viewer is not aware of. And the types of products that are counterfeit that are high on the list are sports memorabilia, t-shirts and sweatshirts and purses as well. And electronics is very hot, as well as medications.
Yeah, I think China has a very complex supply chain where these products, especially the pharmaceuticals, get shipped around the world and wind up into import-export friendly nations in the Caribbean, in South America and Africa. And so it's hard to trace them back to China, but they're coming from China. I mean, you can put a tailor-made golf club next to one that's counterfeited in China and you can't tell them apart. But it's damaging, the corporation that makes legitimate products and profits those in China.
Well, and the issue with that is China is producing, but who is taking them and who is using this to finance their operations? We end up realizing that these links actually go to a lot of terrorist groups. The 9/11, for example, our 9/11, a lot of it, we realized later, the financing of that had to do with buying t-shirts. So something so simple as a t-shirt actually could create a huge problem for us in this country for national security purposes if we don't pay attention to what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we're not want to fear monger, but I guarantee you that almost in any household in the United States, if you look close enough in their household, you'll find a counterfeit or pirated product. Now, we talked a little bit about the pharmaceuticals, which is a threat to, again, our more senior population that is probably having to take more drugs, and their prices are unbelievable. And again, that's why the administration is trying to lower drug prices, bring the manufacturer back to the United States. So one, we can lower the price and we can track. But the other concern I have is pirated software, everything from, like I mentioned, Rosetta Stone. You know, if you want to buy Rosetta Stone, it's several $100s, and then you go somewhere and you find it for $49. It's definitely pirated, and also most likely has a back door in it. So you don't want to be buying pirated software, cheap software. You don't want to be buying, you must be careful with thumb drives, memory sticks that are given out at all conventions and things of that nature. And, you know, just like the flu virus or even COVID-19, an electronic virus can spread so rapidly with backdoors in it. And once it gets to the desired location, it can affect everything from manufacturing to our infrastructure to our heating, our electricity, our power plants, etc. So be very careful of pirated software. It's not worth it.
And if you think, okay, I'm immune, this is not my situation, I don't have grandparents, I don't have elderly, I don't have children, this will affect you. Because, for example, those medications that you're not taking, you're not buying, you don't know anybody that is, they're being sold all over the world. And this creates drug-resistant diseases. So once we have a drug-resistant disease, it's going to come back to us in this country. So we have to be paying attention, and we have to be involved in fighting this global threat, because in one way or another, just like this pandemic, it will spread. And that drug-resistant disease that all of a sudden is out there because the wrong dose was given is a concern.
Absolutely. And so I think going right back to the start of today's report, this has an impact of $200 to $500 billion on our economy each year. And was it Ronald Reagan that said $1 billion here and $1 billion there? It eventually adds up to real money. And also 750,000 jobs are lost due to counterfeit and pirated products. So I think, again, to reiterate, counterfeit pirating is not a victimless crime. It's affecting you, it's affecting me, it's affecting our communities, our families, etc. So I think this is a great report, Adriana, and you're the expert. We've covered everything from the 4 types of counterfeit pirated products. We've covered the supply chain, the threats to the what'd you call it, the tri-state area, or not the tri-state
Well,
area?
it is the triple frontier or the tri-border.
Or the tri-border area, and that China is our biggest culprit, and I think the biggest threat to every single household is the counterfeit pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, I think we need to give the viewer now something positive. What are we going to do? What can they do? What's out there to combat this issue? We talked about shouldering the cost. The United States government, we have the IPZAR, we have the Office of the Whistleblower, we have different ways of tracking and helping companies going through this type of a situation. And if they reach out, they will get the help, and it will allow us as a country to track terrorist financing. We don't have the roadmap if we don't know what's going on. But let's talk now about what has been done, what steps are done, which work and which don't work. One of the things that they have done, and Hewlett Packard did this, was they changed the packaging of their product. They made it very, very difficult to open and very unique. A lot of companies are starting to do this. That's a great idea, because if you put more money into the packaging, it makes it harder for the counterfeit to actually not only counterfeit that product, but that packaging. So what did the wrongdoers do? they put up these recycling plants so that you would then turn in this packaging, and then they use the packaging. So it can be very frustrating because you put a lot of money and a lot of thought into how to stop counterfeiting, and all of a sudden you realize there is a back door. They are getting in. They're taking the recycling. So and they're recycling the packages. So what we were asking is, if you do buy a product like this, make sure you throw it away and you don't recycle this. These are concerns that you don't even think about when you're trying to solve the issue. Another one out there is, you've got the butterfly wings, you've got the jumbo nanowires that are placed, and the jumbo nanowires are basically like a thumbprint, a fingerprint, and it is a little tag that you put on, and this is unique. And if you've got this tag on there, you're able to see whether this product is or is not counterfeit, because producing that jumbo nanowire, again, is another step at deterring, in the same way that we have two-factor authentication for your phones. We're doing this with products in order to try to solve or help solve this problem.
Yes, I think pharmaceuticals are now putting RFID tags on their drugs so that they can track that it comes from a manufacturing plant directly to the medical professionals or to the consumer. So yes, we don't want to just be fear-mongering. What can people do? I think, especially during this election cycle, you can ask your congressman or your council person, whoever is up, what are you doing about pirated and counterfeit goods? You could ask your medical professionals, how do I know that the prescriptions you're giving me or the medication you're giving me is authentic, and how should I identify it? So an informed public will ask great questions and challenge their elected officials, and challenge their providers of services, goods, providers of medical care. So we don't want you to think that all is lost, but by being informed, by being knowledgeable of the types of counterfeit products, where they come from, how to spot them, you can make a difference in your life. And again, I think you ask your elected officials, what are you doing about this?
Mm-hmm. And I think you inform as well, like your doctors. If they're telling you to buy products, they may not be aware of this situation. So
Absolutely.
we're not putting the ability to combat this problem in the hands of the consumer.
We're not telling you what to think. We're challenging you to think about counterfeiting, piracy, how it affects you personally, and how you can combat it in your home. Just one step by each individual will make a difference. So I think this has been a great report, Adriana. So we want to thank our great sponsors who have confidence in us bringing quality information to you. Again, not teaching you what to think, but challenging you to think. And we want to thank the University of Oklahoma, and specifically the Price College of Aerospace and Defense. And if you want to find out more about the Sanford Hall Report or about the programs available, go to the University of Oklahoma's website, look at the Price College pages, and you'll see that there are master's degree programs, certificate programs that will advance your critical thinking and your education to make you a more informed consumer and citizen of the United States. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today.